couple of communications. I guess the first one is 1541 Regional Road 12 through Wilford. There's a suggestion of some sort of a speed board going in there for a month or two. I was just wondering if staff are aware of when that might happen. Mr. Colucci?
I have not had a discussion with them as to when it would happen, but I think they're suggesting once the construction is done that they would install that because they figure that the traffic would resume to normal after the construction.
So after the roundabout construction, basically? Okay. Just wanted to comment on 1548, Mr. Kemp from Durham Region Works Department, River Street at Albert. In his communication, he requested if residents had specific information with regard to issues at that intersection that they be contacted and he would do a site visit. I wish to confirm that that's exactly what occurred. There was a Sunderland resident and Mr. Kemp on site. The resident was relaying concerns of potential accidents, the way the intersection is configured. And there was some tree limbs and branches covering a sign that Mr. Kemp made note of and will have corrected if it's not already corrected. So just wanted to mention that Mr. Kemp is good to his word. So if any resident has specific knowledge of incidents and they wish to relay it to Mr. Kemp, he'd be more than willing to have a site visit and go over it with him. I was wondering on 1648 if there was on the Cannington Municipal Wells and Pump House. Mr. Colucci, are you aware of any updates on the project, or should we get in contact with Durham Region?
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, the update is what we received. I haven't really heard any more than that. I know that they're working on their designs and the wellhead protection area and stuff like that. So
they did successfully find a site for a new well.
Yes.
And so we're proceeding with everything that's required in order before we go to construction phase.
Correct.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you. Just on 1541, I noticed correspondence from the region that Wilfrid is spelled incorrectly, as well as on the maps for Durham Region Transit. I noticed Romington wasn't placed on the map, as well as Wilfrid was spelled incorrectly, so possibly staff can relay this concern to Durham Region for the correct spelling in our areas. Be most gracious.
Regional Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Just to Mr. Colucci, regarding the roundabout at Wilford, do we have an update as to when that construction is going to take place? I know it was originally supposed to happen this year and it got delayed. Have they given you a timeline at all?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Well, next year is the timeline, again, unless there's further delays. So next year is the proposed construction time. They did have some delays with respect to tree locations, and they had to do a redesign to save a tree. And the last design drawings I saw, I think, were 60% design. So the next round will be 90% design, and that's when they go to tender.
Councillor Lodbeck.
In reference to 1532, I was really disappointed when they came back with this kind of analysis. And I guess the question through to Nick, when is our own roads needs study completed?
Through you, Madam Chair. Our roads needs study is underway. I'm expecting the report anytime in the next month or so, and the plan would be that I would do a presentation with that road need study for the new council, new two-month council.
And that'll have trip counts on this road as well?
It will have traffic counts, and some of them may be interpolated because we didn't actually take traffic counts on all the roads. They do a percentage of the roads so that they can interpolate the traffic counts of all those. So then we should have good traffic counts for that road as well.
Okay, please don't lose this file. I'm not done with it.
Any more questions or comments? All those in favor of the receive? That's carried, thank you. I have one motion here for 1535 from Councillor Miller. Move that the Public Works Committee receive report 2018-PW-11 for information and direct staff to implement recommendations contained herein. This is in reference to the sidewalk correspondence 1535. Questions or comments regarding? Councillor Miller, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. Following my motion to refer the sidewalk master plan to the Brock Accessibility Advisory Committee in the spring, the committee met with staff on April 17th, and that committee was shown the same presentation which the Public Works Committee saw on March the 12th. As outlined in the report, this is a good start in addressing the sidewalk master plan. It is, in my opinion, I believe that all three towns want and need safe, walkable communities in all seasons. There are many sidewalks that are narrow, but with the acquisition of a smaller plow, this will address this issue, I hope, thus not having the public use the roadways in the winter. The committee also discussed asphalt sidewalks. I think this would be a substantial cost savings and address the sidewalk master plan in a more timely manner. I have seen asphalt sidewalks in other communities, and a good example is in the Sunderland Fairgrounds with the Sunderland Lions Initiative walking trail. I would hope that council allocate more dollars to the sidewalk master plan in the upcoming budget, and I would like to thank the members of the back committee with their recommendations. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Mayor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Colucci. I appreciate the fact you put priority numbers on the whole plan, and getting to the top 10 is over $2.6 million. Obviously, this will take a few years to accomplish. So I guess for the next council, a suggestion would be we've upped it to over 150,000 for this year, but even at 150,000, that would be insufficient to work. Well, basically, it would take over 10 years. Is that? I guess the question is, do you want to be doing this over a shorter period of time? In which case, you'd have to up what's going into the 2019 budget. I'll start with number 4, priority number 4, which is in this year, $25,000 to purchase specialized equipment to allow winter maintenance of narrow sidewalks. Can you better explain what equipment's required?
Through you, Madam Chair. So we do have a number of sidewalks that are less than 4 feet in width. So basically it's going to require a narrower tractor that has a 3-foot blower or blade on it, which would be utilized by our existing staff. Once the first network of sidewalks are complete, then they would go out and do this other network. So staff are right now looking at equipment, and they're testing out some equipment. So we're hoping that once this is approved, then we'll proceed with the purchase of that before it snows in late January.
Okay. Just so it's clear, this specialized equipment on narrower sidewalks will mean that less sod is torn up on the sides?
Presumably.
Okay.
There's no guarantee that there's less sod because, we still have during the first couple of snowfalls, the ground's not frozen, so, the problem with when we tear the sod up, the sidewalk is lower than the grass. So even if you have the proper width, sometimes, you go a little off and you'll hit the sod because the sidewalk is sunk a little lower, and, that happens over time.
Sometimes the equipment bounces on the sidewalk because of the condition of the sidewalk. Okay. Number 3, utilize alternate construction methods. Can you explain what that might entail?
What we were thinking, there's 2 things that we do a little bit of now, but we could do more with some more budget. First would be grinding, where we actually bring a grinding machine in that shaves off the lip of the sidewalk, so where you have a trip hazard. Right now we do that, we rent one for a week and we do a few areas. So with a little bit more money we could bring it in and correct a few other areas. The other is where they actually will lift up sections of sidewalk, so they come in and inject a grout under the sidewalk. So where we have sidewalks that are a little bit off, they drill a hole in the sidewalk, they inject a grout, and they can lift it up and level it out. So there's a few areas that we could do with that. I mean, we're not talking a lot of money, but we if we bring someone in and say, okay, we have $10,000 worth of work, then that'll help to correct a few areas that need correcting instead of replacing, which is a much higher cost.
Originally, the previous sidewalk master plan indicated a large amount of sidewalk to be removed and not replaced, to be grass. This amendment here basically reverses that position, but I understand there will be some isolated areas that there is no way we're ever going to replace with the sidewalk. But am I correct with that?
Correct. I mean, the main difference between this master plan and the previous version is that the back committee agreed that the ultimate goal should be to have a sidewalk on one side of every road, with the exception of cul-de-sacs. Okay, so that's the main difference. So the goal for me will be to bring a report to you in the springtime, and it's going to identify all of the roads that we're going to end up with a sidewalk on one side, and that means, for instance, on one street, if we have a sidewalk on one side, but it's not all the way, and then there's a partial sidewalk on the other side, we would say we're going to complete the sidewalk on one side, and we're going to remove these sections of sidewalk on the other side. So we'll end up with one sidewalk on one side of the road that will be continuous, or we might have, a sidewalk on half the road on one side and the other half on the other side, and we'll take out pieces of sidewalk that are, half buried or 3 feet wide. So that's sort of, but the end goal would be that every road will have a sidewalk on one side of the road or the other.
So basically, also too, the top 10 or top 9 is basically repair and replace existing sidewalks as opposed to going into areas that never had a sidewalk.
Correct, because the areas that never had a sidewalk are down on 12 and 13.
Right. Okay. Madam Chair, I fully support these amendments to the master plan, as shows you the value of the back committee, and I commend them for their work on this project to bring some good changes to the plan, that we're not just ripping up grass or ripping up sidewalks and as a short-term measure. I think this is a better approach. And also I want to thank the affected area residents who also have told members of council how they feel about just grassing over and not dealing with it. So this is a much better, effective way of going at it, and I want to thank everybody involved in the hard work of the staff.
Councillor Schaefer?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Grant did touch on some of mine. I want clarification again with respect to the purchasing of specialized equipment. Are you purchasing a piece of equipment for each of the 3 towns? Like, how is this gonna work and what exactly is it gonna be? And will it be for this winter maintenance?
It will be for this winter, and it will probably only have to be for Beaverton and Kennington, because Sunderland sidewalks are of the width necessary for our current plow to maintain. So there's a couple sections on in Sunderland that we don't maintain now, but staff feel that the current equipment will be able to maintain it.
And one more, if I could ask, could we receive an updated map of the three towns, and based on this this study, what sidewalks will now be done?
Like be plowed, like an update, like
With respect to the sidewalks, I'm assuming, based on these recommendations, which I totally agree with, that there will be some changes to the original mapping of where we were taking out sidewalks, etc. And we have not been provided a map of those so that we can take a look at it, and I would like to see that.
yes, so that would be brought to council in the spring, after, because as part of the road needs study, we'll also be picking up the sidewalks and the condition of the sidewalks. So once I get the road needs study, then I can do a map and sort of come up with a plan of where we're leaving sidewalks in, where we're taking them out, and it's going to take a little bit of work.
Maybe just to clarify, I think what the councillor is asking is if they can receive a map showing the sidewalks that are to be plowed, both with the Kubotas this winter as well as with the specialized equipment, which would address those sidewalks that are narrower. Is that correct through you, Madam Chair?
Well, actually, that is correct, but it was a twofold question. One with respect to the plowing, absolutely. One is with respect to what work is going to be done in this current budget, and with what you've itemized here, and with the recommendations of the Accessibility Committee. Does that mean that your original plan has changed at all?
Okay, so part one of the question is the plow route. So yes, we're working on a revised plow route for the sidewalk plows, and whenever we have that ready before it snows, I'll bring that to committee. The second would be the capital. So yes, proposed in the capital for this year, we had a bunch of sidewalks to be removed, which we will not be doing now. Okay, so we're not doing any removal. The removal and replacements that were proposed in the capital budget are complete now. And in addition to that, we will be doing some spot removal and replacements that have been identified by staff as areas, that are broken up and that are a risk area. So we'll be doing that. I will get a plan showing the little areas from staff, and I can circulate that by email so that everyone knows where that's going.
So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair Campbell. Through you, I too agree with the recommendations in the report. I just wondered, will this, the fact that we're, as Mr. Clucci said, the staff will do the sidewalks that require 5 feet, and then we'll do the ones that require the 3-foot machine. And some of them may have been ones that were not maintained in the winter previously. Will this affect the staffing requirements, or will we need to hire anyone else to look after these extra duties?
I think that right now we're planning to go with the same number of staff, because the idea would be that, we might have more hours for the sidewalk staff, but the minimum standard, the time frame that we have for completing the sidewalks, that will allow us, plenty of time to have the same staff doing it. At the same time, if it looks like we're having trouble with that, we'll have, we can also move some of our full-time staff that, once they're finished doing the winging, they can go on sidewalks. So we have the flexibility there with staff.
Thank you. And Councillor Miller mentioned her preference to introduce asphalt on more of the sidewalks rather than concrete. I think we all, I shouldn't speak for everyone, I think most people prefer the looks and the presentation that the concrete gives us. Recognizing that asphalt would be somewhat cheaper, could you give us just a ballpark estimate on what the savings would be for an asphalt as opposed to concrete per meter or whatever?
Because we haven't done any 1.5 meter wide asphalt sidewalks, the sidewalk we did for the trails were 2 meters. Those 2 meter asphalt sidewalks, bearing in mind that they were constructed in open fields, so we had to excavate and put gravel and everything, that cost is about the same as a 1.5 meter removal and replacement sidewalk. But building a 1.5 meter asphalt sidewalk as a removal and replacement, it's probably less money, but because we haven't tendered it, I don't want to give an exact number. We could always get some quotations for it prior to the budget next year and see. The problem with the 1.5 meter asphalt is that they can't use traditional equipment. They don't have a 1.5 meter spreader, so then it ends up being mostly handwork. So they're building the sidewalk by hand. So that's why when you see asphalt walkways in other municipalities, they're usually 2 meters or 3 meters wide. So they end up being, much wider. So you can just do a normal spreader with them. So the cost may be, in the same range. The advantage to doing asphalt is that in some cases you can actually pour, instead of removing the concrete, you can put the asphalt over top of the concrete. So you can actually build up the sidewalk and put 2 inches of asphalt over top. And then you're actually saving the removal cost, which is substantial.
Thank you. I guess I have one final question, that being, do you anticipate any reluctance on the part of some property owners to have a sidewalk of that width in front of their property? And the reason I ask that is someone might have landscaping or flower beds or trees, or maybe there's utility poles that restrict the width. I guess I'll ask, what has your experience been on that in the past?
Well, if they have a sidewalk in front of their property already that's, say, 3 feet wide, and we were putting one in that's 5 feet wide, we have to look at each case specifically, right? Because you may not be able to put a 5 foot wide sidewalk the whole length because there may be poles and trees and stuff in the way. So, and we may have to bend the sidewalk around here and there, but we'll have to, staff, as those come up, we'll have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis. Now, where they don't have a sidewalk, for instance, if we pick a street and let's say on one side of the road there's a sidewalk halfway and then there's no sidewalk at all, and we want to extend that sidewalk all the way, then we're going to have to, talk to those residents, say, okay, we're planning a sidewalk here, and so it's going to be a little bit of work to let them know, okay, we're proposing a sidewalk, and as we heard in some of the subdivisions, some people don't like sidewalks in front of their house, and some people do. So, it might be an issue. But if it's the plan to have one, then I think that if I do a drawing for all the municipalities showing where we're proposing sidewalks, then it'll be a public information, so everyone will know this is what we're planning. So there won't be a surprise when we actually go and do it.
Councillor Lodwick.
How wide do pavements have to be in order to be declared a trail? The reason I ask because there is more funding available for trails, it seems like, than there is for sidewalks.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that it matters. I think if it's 1.5 meters wide, you could still call it a trail. You know, like the trails we built in Sunderland and in Beaverton were 2 meters wide, mostly.
Any other questions or comments? I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Colucci, for your comprehensive report, for DAC's input, and sidewalk safety is, as always, a priority. So, back to the motion that the Public Works Committee receive Report 218 PW11 for information and direct staff to implement recommendations contained herein. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on to others. Councillor Parliament. Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Kemble, to staff, if you have an update on the graveling program for Brock and the 10th concession.
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, the graveling program is well underway. I think we're at about 60%, so I would expect, if the weather permits, within 2 weeks we'll be finished, including the 10th.
Thank you. And regarding 1651, I just want to put out a concern. When the land is completed its lease, will there be, or take in consideration, there should be some kind of block access into this little area? Or I could just see kids in the future, this would be a party place that's all surrounded by bush, and a roadway going into it, a driveway going into it could be problematic if there's not some kind of roadblocks until the trees enclose this area. Just a concern I have.
Thank you. Mayor Grant?
No others, thank you.
Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, through you. I just have one. Under our items currently outstanding, on May 7th, I had requested that staff monitor the success of the parking option that we did put a motion through for this year, and that it would be, a report would come back to us in the fall, so I just want to check and make sure that report is forthcoming.
Okay, so one of the issues is that the signage has not been erected. We had a very large sign order, dealt with parking as well as speed signs and so on. So, you know, obviously that part is not going to be able to be addressed. The instruction to bylaw enforcement over the course of the summer was basically use your discretion. You know, if there's obvious parking issues, then they would issue tickets. We can certainly provide an update on that aspect of it, but we chose, in the absence of signage, obviously not to undertake an overzealous enforcement campaign. So, but we will certainly look at enforcement activities and what happened over the summer.
My concern is really that winter is fast approaching, unfortunately, but with it brings an awful lot of ice fishermen and continued problems with parking. So I just want to make sure we're keeping an eye on it. I think in some cases the winter parking and trailer and truck parking is even more of an issue than the summer parking. So I'd just like to keep up on it and see if we can make some resolutions there.
Councillor Lodbeck.
Yes, thank you. Just one other through to Nick. Just wondering if the Cambridge sign is being, whether it's coming in soon or not.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, the sign has been ordered. It's not in yet. We're expecting a big sign order this week or early next week, and we'll have it put up.
Regional Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair Campbell. The question was asked about the graveling. It's a hard topping. What's the stage of it and completion?
Yes, so the HL2 program is about 40% complete. So we're having, every time they were planning to come in, it would rain, so we had to delay. And though we haven't had a lot of rain, but it just happened that way. And the double surface treatments, they will be starting on Thorside Road next week, and then they'll finish Thorside Road and then proceed to the other sections.
Thank you. Could you just refresh my memory on what roads are being hard topped this year?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the concession, the other
I'll
half.
get it from you
I
later.
can't, yeah, I'll give you.
That's fine, thank you. And I do have a motion here that I'd like to present.
Yes, we have a motion from Regional Councillor Ted Smith that the bylaw regarding election